It's the hottest summer on record. You step inside, press a single button, and within minutes the room around you falls cool and quiet. We do this every day, and treat it as normal, as if cool air on demand were something the world owed us. But for almost the entire span of human history, that button did not exist. There was no switch to flip, and when the heat came, there was nowhere to hide from it. And this was no minor discomfort because heat like this could kill. And yet humans didn't just survive in the hottest places on Earth. They built entire cities in the deserts and the sun-scorched valleys, and somehow, with no electricity, they thrived. So how did they do it? How did ordinary people handle killer heat long before anyone could flip a switch? The first answer is a strange one, because it's already sitting inside you. Your own body is a cooling machine, one of the finest in the animal kingdom, with somewhere between 2 and 5 million sweat glands packed into your skin, which makes you one of the very few animals on Earth that cools itself by sweating. Harvard researchers Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman once argued in the journal Nature that this may have handed our ancestors a wild advantage, letting them chase prey across the open plains at high noon under a sun that would drop almost any other animal, while the lions lay collapsed in the shade. It's still just a theory, but a haunting one, that we may once have owned the hottest hours of the day. Still, sweating only takes you so far, and you cannot sweat your way through a desert summer forever. So the real genius of our ancestors was never in their skin. It was in the walls they learned to build. And here is the one idea to hold on to, because everything else depends on it. Ancient people had no way whatsoever to make cold, no engine, no electricity, no way to force heat out of a room by brute power. So they did something far cleverer. Instead of trying to make cold, they learned instead to move heat, turning their homes, and eventually their entire cities, into quiet machines with no moving parts. Machines that ran on nothing but physics. And to do it, they used 4 free forces of nature, over and over again. They used shade to block the sun before it ever arrived, thick walls to swallow the heat and hold on to it, and moving air to carry that heat away, and evaporating water to pull heat straight out of the air itself. Shade, mass, air, and water, that, in the end, is the whole secret. Everything you are about to see, from the towers to the buried tunnels to the ice made in a desert, is just those same 4 forces, combined in smarter and smarter ways. And it all begins with the simplest weapon, a shadow. The first move was the obvious one, which was to stop the sun before it ever touched you. So people changed when they lived. In the hottest lands, the middle of the day belonged to no one, so work was done at dawn and again at dusk, and at noon the streets emptied, the shutters closed, and everyone rested in the cool dark. In the afternoon pause we still call a siesta. Then they changed where they lived. Streets were built deliberately narrow, so that tall walls threw shade across them all day long, and homes were painted in bright white lime, which bounced away as much as 80% of the sun's heat before it could ever soak in. And none of this was guesswork, because even the philosopher Socrates described how to orient a house so that its roof blocked the high summer sun while still welcoming the low winter one. Some of this shade was engineered on a staggering scale. At the Roman Colosseum, an enormous fabric awning called the velarium could be stretched right across the sky above the arena, shading as many as 50,000 spectators at once. A system so complex that it took an entire crew of sailors hauling ropes like the rigging of a ship to open and close it. Shade kept the worst of the sun off, but the heat that still slipped through had to go somewhere. And that is exactly where the walls came in. Walk into an old desert house in the dead of summer, and something feels wrong, in the best way. Outside, the air is punishing, yet inside it stays cool and dim, and no machine is running. The secret lies in the walls themselves. Thick walls of mud, brick, or stone behave like a battery, except that what they store isn't electricity, it's heat. All day long, the sun beats down and the wall slowly drinks that heat in, but mud and stone are agonizingly slow, so slow that the heat can take 8 to 12 hours to crawl all the way through to the inside. By the time it finally arrives, the sun has set, night has fallen, and the outside air has turned cool, so the wall breathes its stored heat back out into the dark. Day after day, it stays exactly one step behind the sun. Some people push this idea even further. On a dusty plateau in northern China, families carved their homes straight down into the earth itself, dwellings known as yaodong, so that from a distance you'd see nothing but flat farmland until the ground suddenly opened into a sunken courtyard with whole families living below the surface. Wrapped in thick, cool ground on every side, those rooms stay near 20 degrees Celsius, even at the peak of summer. Thick walls slowed the heat down, but to push it out, they needed to move the air, and so they built towers. Rising high above the rooftops of the old desert cities, you'll spot strange, chimney-like towers reaching up into the sky, and they aren't built for smoke, they're built for wind. They're called wind catchers, and they may be among the most elegant machines ever built without a single moving part. A wind catcher reaches up to grab the cooler, cleaner breeze flowing high above the streets and funnels it straight down into the rooms below. And when there's no wind, it works in reverse, letting hot air rise up and out through the tower while it pulls fresh air in behind it. This idea is old, astonishingly old. You can see it drawn in Egyptian tomb paintings more than 3,000 years old, some of which are now kept in the British Museum. In the Iranian desert city of Yazd, one of these towers still stands more than 30 meters tall, and in the room beneath it, ribbons of silk drift on a cool breeze, while just outside, the desert bakes in the sun. Others found their own ways to command the moving air. In India, builders carved stone screens riddled with tiny holes, called jali, so that as the wind squeezed through those little openings, it sped up and cooled down, jetting a fresh draft deep into the house. Moving air helped enormously, but the dry desert air was still hiding a secret weapon, and the moment they added water to it, everything changed. Here is the real twist, because the most powerful trick was the same one your own body already knew: evaporation. When water turns into vapor, it carries heat away with it, which is exactly what your skin is doing every time you sweat. Ancient people learned to do the same thing on purpose. Across Egypt and India, people stored their water in pots of unglazed clay, and because that clay is slightly porous, a little water constantly seeps to the surface and evaporates into the dry air. You can watch the outside of the pot turn dark and damp, beaded with moisture, while the water held inside stays cool to the touch. That tiny, endless act of evaporation pulls heat right out of the pot and chills the water within, and people were doing this more than 4,000 years ago. Now, to be clear, a clay pot never cooled an entire room. It cooled the water and the food kept inside it, which, out in a desert, was precious enough on its own. Egyptians carried the same idea to their doorways, hanging wet reeds across the entrance so that the breeze turned cool as it passed through them. And in the grand Islamic palaces, like the Alhambra in Spain, they eventually turned the whole thing into art, setting water to trickle down carved marble slabs called salsabils, spreading it into a thin sheet so that it evaporated faster, while a gentle draft carried that new coolness across the room. Shade, walls, wind, and water. Each one chipped away at the heat until one civilization combined all four of them into something that still sounds impossible today, making ice in the middle of a desert. To pull that off, they first had to master water on an enormous scale, and in ancient Persia, engineers did exactly that by going underground. They dug long, gently sloping tunnels that ran for miles, carrying cool water down from distant mountains on nothing but the pull of gravity, and these hidden channels, called qanats, were so remarkable that UNESCO now protects them as a genuine wonder of human engineering. But the qanats did far more than carry water, because the air deep inside those tunnels stayed cool and damp all year round. So, people built rooms underground, connected them to the flow, and let that cold tunnel air rise gently up into the house, so that on the hottest afternoon imaginable, you could lift a wooden grate set into the floor and feel a whole river of cool air pour up around your feet. Cool water hidden underground was already astonishing enough, but the Persians still weren't finished, because they were about to make that water freeze. For most of human history, ice was a luxury that only nature could hand you, and if a king wanted it, he paid dearly for the privilege. Nearly 4,000 years ago, the ruler of the city of Mari, in what is now Syria, built thick-walled ice houses along the river, and had ice shipped down from the northern mountains by boat, moving it through the dark to keep it from melting on the way. That was the old way of doing things: buy the cold and haul it in. Then Persian engineers did something far more daring, because they stopped importing ice altogether and started making it themselves, right in the middle of the desert. They raised huge domes of mud brick, with walls more than 2 meters thick, sealed with a special mortar built to lock the heat out entirely. And here is the truly ingenious part. On a clear winter night, The desert sky turns bitterly cold, so they ran shallow channels of water into the shade of a tall wall and let that freezing night sky pull the heat straight up and out of the water. There was no fire and no machine involved, just still water, a wall of shade, and a cold, clear sky, doing all of the work in silence. By morning, the water had frozen into solid sheets of ice, and villagers came at first light to lift it and carry it deep underground into the dome, where it stayed frozen right through the blistering heat of summer. They had ice, and even cold desserts, in a place where the sun could kill you thousands of years before the refrigerator was so much as imagined. They pulled ice straight out of a desert, using nothing but mud, water, and the night sky. And then, somehow, we forgot almost all of it. These ideas never stayed still in one place. They traveled. Qanats and wind catchers spread out across the Middle East and on into India, China, North Africa, and Spain, and whole cities were shaped around them. And in fact, some of the oldest planned cities on Earth, in the Indus Valley, laid out their streets to funnel the summer wind through them. For thousands of years, staying cool was never something you bought. It was something you built, something woven into the house you lived in. And then, in a moment, all of that began to change. On the 17th of July 1902, the date the Smithsonian marks as the birth of modern air conditioning, a young engineer named Willis Carrier switched on an entirely new kind of machine. But here is the strange part, because it wasn't built to keep people comfortable. It was built for a printing plant in Brooklyn, to control the humidity so the ink wouldn't smudge on the paper, and keeping human beings cool was almost an afterthought. Within a century, that one machine and its countless descendants would spread across the whole planet and erase thousands of years of shade and towers and buried tunnels. The button had won, but it came with a hidden cost, one that we are paying right now. Look for a moment at everything we gained. Cool air, anywhere, at any time, at the simple press of a button. It is a kind of miracle. But then look carefully at what we lost along the way. We stopped building for shade, we forgot the courtyards and the thick walls and the towers that once reached up to catch the wind. We lost the gentle rhythm of the afternoon rest, and we more or less forgot how to live alongside heat. And then there's the twist, the part that matters most in a summer like this one. Your air conditioner does not destroy heat. It can't. All it can do is move heat, taking it out of your room and pushing it into the street outside, and now multiply that by an entire city. A 2014 study from Arizona State University found that all of that waste heat, pumped out of millions of machines at once, raised the outdoor temperature at night by more than 1 degree Celsius, almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit. So the city grows hotter, which makes everyone crank their air conditioners higher still, which in turn only makes the city hotter yet again. The ancients gave their heat somewhere to go, and it cost them nothing. We pay good money to shove ours next door, and it comes straight back to us. Which brings us all the way back around to that button. It's the hottest summer on record. You reach for the remote, you press it, and within a few minutes the room falls cool and quiet around you. It feels, for a moment, as though we've finally beaten the heat, but we haven't, not really. We've hidden the fight behind a switch, and forgotten the walls, the towers, and the cold night skies that once did all of that work for us, for nothing. The people who came before us couldn't press a button, so instead they read the wind, they shaped the earth, and they turned mud and shade and darkness itself into comfort. And now, as the world grows hotter around us, engineers are going back to those ancient ideas, the wind catchers, the thick walls, the buried air, searching for a way to stay cool without slowly cooking the planet in the process. So maybe the future of keeping cool isn't ahead of us. Maybe it has been buried in the past this whole time. If you'd like to see more forgotten engineering like the yakhchal, stay with us, and we'll keep digging it back up.